Welcome, my fellow wrestling fans of all shapes, sizes, colors, and creeds. This is Just the Worst Wrestling Podcast. This is our brand new podcast here from the Just the Worst podcast series. I'm your host, Billy Donnelly, lifelong wrestling fan, and as a result, on my docket of things to do, get a wrestling podcast off the ground. You may know me from, you can find me at least online. You may know me from there, from thisisinfamous.com as well as joeblow.com. You can also listen to me at Just the Worst Podcast as well, because once again, this is a Just the Worst Podcast network, a whole series of different podcasts, and wrestling was one of the ones when we launched this thing, this endeavor, got it off the ground that I absolutely wanted to get into. I've been a wrestling fan since I was a kid, way back as a kid. So you could say that I've kind of grown up with wrestling, and I tend to think that I know something about it. I'm not an expert, like many of us are not. I'm not a wrestler. However, I like to think that I have a good mind for wrestling. What works, what doesn't work. I have my opinions on it. And also, I like talking to people inside the business. I love it. I love getting inside their headspace. I love getting inside their minds. I love figuring out what works and what doesn't work, because they see it inside the squared circle, inside those four corners and those three ropes on that canvas, living and breathing it every single night. I know from my perspective as a watcher, as a critic, so to speak, of what I enjoy, what I think works, what I think connects to the fans, being one, sitting amongst them, being in the bleachers, in the crowd, in the seats, and feeling those chills, feeling that excitement, feeling that enthusiasm that comes around all the time when wrestling can be so great. Because let's face it, when it's good, it's really good. When it's bad, we bitch and we moan and we complain about why isn't it good all the time. When it's good, it's really good, so how come it can't be good all the time? How could they have such missteps along the way where they just can't seem to nail it down? It's like golf. I was talking to somebody earlier today about wrestling, and somebody who had been a fan in the past, and just couldn't get into it anymore. They used to be a diehard. They used to be really into it, and They just couldn't get into it anymore, and they wanted to know why it was that I was still into it after all these years. Why am I still a regular watcher? And I told them it was like golf, because it is an obligation. It is habitual to a point, and once you start, you keep going. And sometimes you watch because you got nothing else to do, or you've always watched, and as a result, it kind of stays that way. And the business is cyclical, so when it's down, it's down. It's like those 15 holes of a round of golf where, you're hitting the ground behind the ball. You're hitting these terrible shots. You're putting balls in the water. You're putting balls in the trees. Some balls that you hit, you thought you hit them perfectly, and you don't know where they are. You can't find them. It's just a disaster. You're not a professional at it. You just know that it's not going very well right now. And then you have like 3 holes filled with some shots that you wish you could do all the time. Just great, perfect shots. Like, oh, I felt that. That was amazing. If only I could repeat it. Now I'll have to come back and try it again. And that's what gets you coming back for wrestling. That's, not all the time. When it's good, it compels you to follow through with the stories, to follow through with the characters. When it's not good, it's golf. So So what we're going to do basically on this show is we're going to talk to some wrestlers, some sports entertainers. I know the dirty word there, but that's how the WWE likes to refer to their guys. But we're going to talk to men and women who this is their livelihood. This is what they do. They are professional wrestlers through and through. And we're going to get into it with them week in and week out. Asking them good hard questions, good tough questions. And get into their mindset. Get into their headspace. Tap into their wrestling brains. And, relive some history, relive some moments, and also just kind of get their opinions and their thoughts on how the business works, how it's evolved for better or worse, and see how that goes. Tonight, as we kick off, or I guess it's not even tonight. Well, it's tonight when I'm recording this right now. It's whenever you want it to be when you're listening to this. But as we kick off just the worst wrestling podcast, in this debut episode, got a very special guest here joining us. Couldn't think of anybody nicer. Couldn't think of a finer guest for episode 1. WWE Superstar Dean Ambrose here on Just the Worst Wrestling Podcast. So we're going to get to him in just a bit. I want to talk wrestling for a little bit, because that's kind of how this show is going to operate. Going to talk a little bit of wrestling, then we'll get into the good stuff, then we'll get into the meat. Not that the other stuff isn't good, it's plenty good. It's just more current, I guess, reactions to some of the latest happenings in the wrestling world, which we all talk about, as wrestling fans we all talk about. We hop online, we hop on Reddit, we hop on Facebook, hop on Twitter. And we have reactions, gut reactions that we immediately want to pour out to our fellow wrestling fans who either will agree or disagree. And that's kind of what the point of the show is here. It's not for you to agree with everything I say. And maybe you'll disagree. I don't know. Either way, these are my thoughts, my rationales, my opinion, what I see out there. And you know what? Maybe you say, Billy, you're so right. I can't believe it. Not that you can't believe it. I always believe when I'm right. But, you're right there with me. There are other times you might just say, dude, you can't be more wrong. But, we're going to have some fun with it. We're going to talk it out. We're going to find some good stuff to discuss. And we might as well kick it off right away with one thing that's been on my mind for weeks and weeks and weeks. I wrote a column about it you can find over at thisisinfamous.com. And that has to deal with the Diva Revolution, or what's called the Diva Revolution, but what really has been anything but over the weeks. They as a huge fan of what has been going on down in NXT, down in Florida, where the perception of women's wrestling inside the WWE by way of NXT is definitely changing. For far too long it's been about looks and eye candy or whatever. And look, I'm not demeaning or degrading or insulting anyone who's had that spot over the past few years. This is what they were called upon to do. They were paid to do it. They tried to do it to the best of their ability. More power to them. It's just something that over time has become kind of stale. Something that doesn't really add anything to the show. Nothing that anyone really wants to see. Especially when you look, if you just want to look at good-looking women, you could do that any day of the week, any second of any day of the week. I mean, that's what the internet's for. The internet's for looking at beautiful people all the time. So I don't need to go to the wrestling matches to see them. Go to the wrestling matches to see unique and interesting characters solve their conflict in a wrestling ring. And that includes women who also have conflict. They compete with athletics to solve their differences. And for far too long, that hasn't been the case. It's been about selling reality shows or God knows what else. You know, it's just nothing is really clicked. It seems to be, you know, in the past few years when women came on, it was more about selling concessions. Because the second there was a Divas match, everybody just would get up and hit the concourse in the arena and, you know, get their beer or their drink or their pizza or, you know, maybe I got time for me to go see if I want to buy a shirt, or maybe they get up and they go take a leak. You know, when you're at home, it's time for me to go to the fridge and see if I can find something to snack on, or oh look, I could pee before something else I really want to see is coming on. You know, that's what the Divas division had been for far too long. And with the Divas Revolution, or what they call the Divas Revolution, it's bringing up women from NXT who have been tearing the house down on a nightly basis. You know, bringing up Charlotte, daughter of Ric Flair. Bringing up Becky Lynch. Bringing up my personal favorite, Sasha Banks, who I'm a huge mark for the boss. Huge. Unapologetic about it. And bringing them up and trying to allow them to resuscitate what has been a dead Divas division, just laying there, just a corpse of a thing, just a rotting corpse, just festering with nothing. And it's been a disaster since they brought it up. As sad as it is, it's sad as it is, because it's just, you know, they took all these women and they grouped them together with Team Bella and Team PCB and Team Bad, and all the uniqueness, all the individualism that made anything going on in NXT special and organically special was just thrown into the WWE machine and homogenized and mass produced and softened, and, you know, the edge was taken off and it just became another thing. It became so generic. And, you know, look, over the weeks, they've been trying to do something different with it. You know, instead of having non-stop six diva tag matches, now they're just having regular tag matches. You might even get a singles match, which is at least good to allow for some individual personalities to come through and start to shine. But the way the WWE operates is they find one thing and they just do it all the time, non-stop, until it's just, you're bored with it. And you know, like I said, even being a Sasha Banks mark, you know, I'm excited that they moved her away from doing these 6 diva tag matches, but like, how many weeks in a row do I have to watch her fight Paige, who also is another outstanding talent who came up through the NXT system and is now a WWE diva. So, you know, it just becomes this endless cycle of them doing the same thing, when really the only reason that the Divas Revolution was supposed to be anything special was because they were doing things so differently down in NXT. So why wouldn't you just let that keep happening? Why are you gonna break something? Why are you gonna change something that's not broken? Or in fact, why break something that's perfectly fine so you can repair it in another image? It doesn't make any sense. Not to me, at least. So look, they've been trying to now move towards, you know, the new blood, and look, people who had previously been around, who can't hang in the ring, you know, are going to kind of get swept aside, which is a good thing. there are still roles for those women on the roster. There's still things for them to do. Right now you have, it's very uncomfortably soap opera-y. This deal with Lana and Summer Rae engaged in the feud as well with Dolph Ziggler and Rusev. They're still doing something. They're still being allowed and involved in carrying storyline. So it's not like they're totally not around. It's just not everyone's going to be cut out to hang in the ring because it's going to bring everyone down. You're only as good as your weakest player. And when your weakest player is so far and away from your top, it doesn't really help. You want to kind of close that gap some so that you can move forward with a really solid product. So the new blood has been necessary. And it looked like perhaps we may be getting something of the sort this past week on Raw, where Nikki Bella, who, has been knocked for a really long time as the Divas champion and was going to own her own streak here, becoming the longest reigning Divas champion of all time, surpassing the now retired AJ Lee, who the WWE would love to try and forget about as best they possibly can, because of her relationship with the departed CM Punk. So she's going for this streak, and they line it up for her to be challenged by Charlotte on Monday Night Raw. Now, there's a couple different ways creatively you can kind of take this thing. Number one is you continue to ride Nikki Bella, who has become a really solid heel in the female division. Okay, really good. Her sister, not so much. But Nikki Bella has embraced kind of being a really good heel. Kind of knows how to get some heat on herself, has figured out how to get the crowd hating her as they're supposed to. So you keep the strap on her, that's perfectly fine. She can carry this title for a little bit longer, and you build it up and make it mean something. And they have her square off against Charlotte, who has the pedigree of, once again, being the daughter of the 16-time world champion, Nature Boy, Ric Flair. And you have a very similar situation to down what they had in NXT, where she was being brought along as well to then be the face and carry the Divas division. Because once again, you're talking about someone who was born into the business. Her dad just so happens to be arguably the greatest of all time. So you line this up where you have Charlotte challenging Nikki Bella for the Divas Championship at 10 o'clock. So they're pushing this pretty far back on the card. This isn't just like a throwaway. This has been a big build to get to this point. The problem is that, while you'd like to see them put the title on Charlotte because that helps generate something new, something fresh, something different, they also haven't put in the time, the effort, or the work in helping separate her as someone else. All they really have is the connection to Ric Flair. NXT down there, they did a little bit better job of helping figure out who she was. It just so happened in the long run there were better characters that eventually wound up surpassing her. Sasha Banks came on like gangbusters to become a huge influence down in NXT. Right now, Bayley, who's the NXT Women's Champion, has done so much character-wise, while it still feels like Charlotte has been figuring a good part of that aspect of her persona out. Okay, so you line this up, and you can go one of two ways. You can go with the new blood, or you can go with the tried and true. Either way, as long as you make it mean something, the fans will be satisfied. You know, if you get good heel heat off of Nikki Bella somehow and retaining, that's still a benefit. If you squash the record and you have Charlotte put an end to that, that helps legitimize Charlotte right away. And then you have room for a feud there as well. But instead, in typical fashion, what the WWE does is they overcomplicate things and they come up with the worst solution that wasn't even one of the two choices that you could have done. That would have made sense, at least. So instead, what you wind up having is you have Brie Bella sneaking into the ring and pulling off twin magic, pulling off the old switcheroo with her sister, getting pinned, having the title be awarded to Charlotte. The crowd goes crazy. And what you have then is the two Bellas ringside explaining to the ref his now mistake in not catching their bullshit. Which normally would be, too bad, so sad. And here comes Stephanie McMahon out onto the ramp to over-explain everything that just happened, sucking all the momentum out of anything that these two women had done. And now you have a result that infuriates people who are watching it. And for all the wrong reasons. This isn't, Nikki Bella won, boo-hoo. This is, what a horrible way to book this thing. Whose idea was this? And that's not a good thing to do when you're trying to help change perception of the Divas division. When you're trying to help assist them in being taken seriously and not as just another part of the card for people to forget. It just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense why something so simple could be made so overly complicated when at the very same time you go down to NXT and you have a brand new NXT TakeOver special coming in October, which will be a rematch between Sasha Banks and Bayley for the NXT Women's Championship. And they're going to headline the special. And they're getting a 30-minute Iron Maiden match. That's historic. It's historic that they're able to be given that opportunity because they've earned it. And yet at the same time on the main roster, the audience can't be trusted with understanding what they're doing because it's hard to understand. When your booking decision has to be explained at length afterwards rather than simply being shown, you're doing it wrong. Especially in a visual medium such as wrestling. You're doing it wrong. You're absolutely doing it wrong. You couldn't be doing it wronger. Wrestling doesn't need lengthy explanations for what it does. That defeats the purpose. And when an authority figure has to come in and explain the screw up and basically undercut any of the emotion that fans would have gotten either sympathy towards Charlotte for being robbed, or anger at Nikki Bella for doing the robbing. Instead, it turns towards Stephanie McMahon for having to make this decision, and the referee for not catching it. Just such a waste. On the bright side, though, you can say that the women now are officially on par with the men in WWE, in that they are equally as poorly booked. I guess feminism has now won out. It's just sad because the potential there to do something great is there, but they can't get out of their own damn way to make that happen. Such is life. One of the other things that seems to be turning up, though, and this is another thing that, I find interesting, is there's talk of different people perhaps returning to the WWE at some point in time down the road. As we all know, TNA not exactly in the best of shape. As we head through September, may well probably be off of television, with Destination America opting out of their initial contract and TNA being left without a television provider, which would be a huge blow to them. And the possibility would then exist for them to have to really go ahead and start cutting some costs, especially on the bigger contracts that they have on their books. Now, two of those names have major WWE history. Number one is Kurt Angle, the Olympic champion, multi-time WWE champion, and someone that fans really were hoping was going to return to the fold and come back home to the WWE after his long stay away, doing still remarkable things in TNA, but with definitely a lot of mileage on the tires and less time than more left on his wrestling punch card. People had hoped when his last contract expired and he was looking to go somewhere that it was going to wind up being the WWE. It wasn't. It wound up being TNA. But he has gone on record as saying once his deal expires, I believe in December, that he will not be resigning. So, looks like there's a pretty big opening for the WWE to kind of step in and maybe do something. The other names that come along with that are the Hardy Boys, Jeff and Matt. Long been a key factor in the tag team division going back to the Attitude Era. And now with the Dudley Boys in the fold, would be a pretty interesting addition coming back to the WWE. Now, I don't know that Jeff Hardy is going to be taken seriously on the singles level again. I just don't know that there's that level of trust to commit to him, having had some of the issues that he's dealt with in the past. He could have been there at one point. I don't know that that window would be open for him in the WWE, much like it wouldn't be or isn't right now for Bubba Ray, who previously had gone by Bully Ray in TNA, as he became kind of a top flight singles heel. So there's all these rumors starting to circulate about old WWE talent perhaps coming back into the WWE. And, fans are excited about it because, there's that nostalgia factor to these guys perhaps rejoining the company. But at the very same time that happens, and look, don't get me wrong, I'd pop hard if the Hardy Boys came back. Same thing for Kurt Angle. It'd be just like when I heard Sting was coming back, and he did. Super, super excited about seeing them come back, because I have that level of fandom that appreciates what they've done in the past. That nostalgia kicks in immediately into high gear that they're going to possibly get involved again. But here's the one wary aspect I have about that. The WWE has had remarkable trouble creating the stars of tomorrow. And by tomorrow, I don't mean years down the line. I literally mean the next day. Outside of John Cena, they have been unable to establish anyone else as a bona fide main eventer capable of carrying the company in a pinch. And they have their special attraction. Don't get me wrong. Brock Lesnar is second to none. There is no one else there's no one else like Brock Lesnar. When Brock Lesnar steps into a ring, I immediately believe that he is going to destroy others, and I want to see it. He is a must-see attraction. And he is a superstar for them. A true superstar. Not a superstar in the WWE sense. I mean a superstar in that he is money. Brock Lesnar's on a card, you want to pay to see it. Brock Lesnar's in an arena near you, you want to lay out cash to go and watch it. You want to experience it because it's something special. Same thing with The Undertaker. The Undertaker's been around a long, long, long time. When he shows up, doesn't make it any less special. It's still an experience. It's still something very, very cool. But you look up and down the roster, and yeah, I mean, Seth Rollins has been moved up to the upper echelons of the card. But there's some booking issues, I think, with him, making him look weak at times, kind of whiny, and not in like the good weaselly heel way. You know, the sneaky, greasy scumbag kind of way. This is more in the, I thought this guy was really smart kind of way. Why are they playing him for a fool? You know, Dean Ambrose was white hot. You know, Dean Ambrose is what I'm going to talk to in just a little bit. Was white hot at one point. White hot. And they let that just kind of go by the wayside. There's something there for Roman Reigns. They blew it. It doesn't mean they can't still regain it, but it's not going to happen right away unless you put in the work. Cesaro, Bray Wyatt, Kevin Owens is a fantastic heel for them. And you look at these guys, Dolph Ziggler should have been a top flight main eventer. Was at one point. At least, you know, before they put an end to the brand switch, to the brand division of Raw and SmackDown. You know, he was a world champion. And where are these guys now? Doing things on Raw and SmackDown that really serve no purpose, carry with it no meaning, have no weight at all to it. They're just kind of there. And everything else revolves around John Cena. And look, don't get me wrong, I'm not a Cena hater. I think John Cena comes to work, steps up his game when it's absolutely needed. John Cena is a true champion and is someone that you do build a company around. But it can't ever just be one guy because people tire of that one guy. And as we've seen with the ratings continuing to fall for Raw and SmackDown, that's not a good sign. Kind of shows that your business overall, your overall business model is not going along very well. Your viewership is down, and you got to look at why. Examine why. Why are people tuning out? Why do you not have the numbers that you used to? And you can't just say, well, people get disinterested. Because there's a reason that happens. You give them a reason to be disinterested. If your program was good all the time, they wouldn't be tuning out. Even as they might say, like, oh, I grew out of it, or oh, I just didn't have time. They would make time. They wouldn't grow out of it. They would still find that emotional connection to the thing that they were a fan of for so much longer than they aren't now. But you got to give that to them by building these new stars, by building talent, investing in it, making it credible, establishing it, making it concrete on a high level, giving everyone a purpose. And as much as I would be a fan of bringing in Kurt Angle and the Hardy Boys, I think all that does is further kicks the can down the road of living in the past, living with the name value of superstars who once were a big deal. They're still a big deal, just not on the level that they used to be. Now, if you told me that they were going to be joining the roster and squaring off against people who could match them as an equal at this point, I'd be all for it. But setting up the Dudleys and the Hardys like 15 years down the road from the last TLCs, while it would be very cool, these aren't guys still in their prime. They need to find people in their prime right now. And that's how you get things back on track. Rising tide lifts all boats here. And unfortunately, I don't know that they've gotten that message yet. And if they ever do, I'll be right here to say congratulations. Give them a high five. Pat them on the back. Nice smack in the butt. Good job. Until then, I keep saying I told you so. All right. Let's get to Dean Ambrose, because it's Dean Ambrose. You know what I'm saying? He's got a brand new movie as part of WWE Studios. It's a WWE Studios and Lionsgate release. This is 12 rounds, 3 lockdown. And Dean Ambrose following the tradition of John Cena and Randy Orton in this series. So, without further ado, WWE Superstar Dean Ambrose. Hey, Dean.
What's up?
I guess the first place to kind of start is making this a transition to a movie set and shooting a feature film. In the past, I've talked to a lot of WWE superstars who have made that temporary shift, and they all seem to struggle with something different as they have to tailor their performance to an entirely different medium. What was the biggest change for you to kind of get your hands on as you tried to get comfortable acting for a feature film, moving from performing in front of a live audience to a very more closed and structured environment?
One of the big differences, like, in wrestling, where like it can be very over the top, very expressive, and everything is everything can be very like big and flashy. Whereas in a movie set, you know what I mean, you might be trying to tell a story or portray an emotion or something without saying any words, or saying very few words. We're just by trading looks with somebody, and then everything is a lot smaller and more internalized. You know, you don't want to. It can very easily. There's one thing I was wary of. You know, I was very wary to not, just fall into, cheesy wrestling acting. You know, because the guy that, I'd say this movie is a lot different than the person that you would see on Monday Night Raw. You know, where I'm just kind of being myself and doing whatever I want to do and going off the cuff and everything. This guy's like he's very internalized and very calculating and detective type. You know what I mean? So like to get into that kind of headspace and try to like show off that intensity without yelling or screaming. That was new for me, and that was a challenge.
Was the fight choreography a bit of a change as well? Because you're doing stunt work, and selling the action is kind of a big part of what you do already. So I imagine that sort of comes second nature. But when you're throwing your punches, you're tackling bad guys, you're engaged in these fight sequences. You're not used to you're with somebody who you're not necessarily as comfortable with, that you're not working with on a regular basis. And there's all these other elements that you have to consider, the camera angle, the blocking, the lights, composing these specific shots. Was that something that took a little bit for you to get used to, or was it kind of a natural progression, I guess?
No, the fight scenes and the stunts were my favorite part, and the easiest thing for me that came so easy. We have really great, fight coordinators, stunt coordinators. They're some of the best in the game. So they put together these awesome fight sequences for me to do. Fight those bad guys. And I took like that duck to water. Like it was funny because I didn't know all that stuff worked. I didn't realize that. Like you put together a fight scene over like a couple days. You like learn it and everything on your downtime, and you walk through it, and then you shoot it in like over like a day. Now we just film the part where he punch him. Now he falls on the table. Now he stops, and now we film the part where he kick him. It's like for us, we're used to going, everything from dialogue to a stunt to the big fight. They might take 20 minutes. It's all in one take, and it's all live. So to me, it was like I learned all the fight sequences in like 2 seconds. I was like, okay, like it took everybody else like 2 days, and I was like, it took me literally 1 minute to memorize these fight scenes. So I was like, yeah, okay, I throw them up against the wall, and then I throw them over the table, and then I jump on them. I got it. It's easy. And to me, I was like, this is what we do. So like, that to me was like the fun part, learning different, learn some new moves, and learn how to like do some cool stuff with guns and knives and so forth. You know what I mean? Like, I get to learn some cool stuff, which I don't get to do every day. And like the funny part to me was like I was just telling stories. Like I didn't realize that like in a movie you don't hit the guy. Because I asked the stunt coordinator, I was like, okay, when we're walking through it, and I was like, okay, when we actually film this, where do I hit him? Like when I land this punch, like where do I put it? Like for that. And he's like, you just about 6 inches in front of his face or so, and go this way so it comes across the camera. And it was like a light bulb went off. Like I'd been fooled by movie magic for 29 years. It had never occurred to me. I never thought about it. I was like, oh, I just whiffed. I just missed him by 6 inches, and I go in front of his face, and he just goes, ugh. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, I didn't know that. I'm like, I'm in a movie set, an action movie, and I just learned this. I feel like such an idiot. But it just never occurred to me. They're like, you just whipped. I'm like, wait, so like, I don't even have to I was prepared to get like punched and kicked in all these scenes. I was like, I didn't know any better. So I was like, wait, Luke, this is genius. I was like, do this on Raw every week. Like, this is great. I don't even have to get punched in the face. Like, it was like such a revelation. It was like finding out, like I had been fooled by movie magic for all these years.
Well, yeah. After a while, when you're watching, you have suspension of disbelief. You buy into everything that you're seeing because it helps transport you to this world that you otherwise wouldn't be involved in. I mean, when you growing up, were you a big action film fan? Were there any ones that that really kind of stuck with you along the way? You know, the ones that you just can't get enough of and you watch over and over. Were there action films that that you had to see like as much as possible?
Yeah, my favorite. I love like the late '80s and the '90s, you know, action movies. You know, like the ones that you know they had more charm than you know, like my favorite ones are like obviously Die Hard. You know, which is there's a lot of similarities with the movie Die Hard, but Die Hard, Point Break, my favorite movies of all time. You know, stuff like Predator and The Lethal Weapon.
Oh, you're like right in my wheelhouse with these films.
Yeah, like, you know, I love that stuff. So, you know, like getting to, you're gonna kind of like be that, you know, you're gonna kind of like, you know, live that kind of like childhood action stuff fantasy. You know what I mean? If nothing else, that was a cool experience.
Mm-hmm. Well, you go off to shoot Lockdown right after SummerSlam in 2014. So you're right in the middle of this white hot feud with Seth Rollins. You know, this really hardcore blood feud built on betrayal. And now you've got to be written off TV to kind of take on this other responsibility of going and do a film. Was there any concern for you about regaining that momentum, you know, hitting the ground running when you were coming back, and kind of getting back to that high point after stepping away from what is a great opportunity, but also seems to be coming at an inopportune time?
Yeah, like, I mean, I guess I don't really think about it like that, you know what I mean? Because it's like, this is just it's a non-stop soap opera that goes year-round with no breaks, you know what I mean? So, like, the carousel is just constantly going in a circle, and, you know, if the guy hops off for 6 weeks, he'll hop right back on, and somebody else will hop back off, and, you know what I mean? It's not like, you know, where, like, you know, if your, you know, goalie goes down right before the playoffs or something, you know, not won the Stanley Cup, you know what I mean? Like, the train's always moving. So, you know, you can always hop back on. And, you know, I think, you know, I always have, you know, confidence in, you know, that I think, you know, when you're good at what you do, you know, good things come. So, you know, I never, you know, it never really occurred to me that, like, that would be a negative in any way. You know, I think a lot of times really, sometimes, you know, absence makes the heart grow fonder. You know, I think if anything, I looked at it like it was a good thing. Because, you know, the first thing that's great about, you know, a guy going away for a month, 2 months, whatever, if he gets hurt, goes to do a movie, gets sick, whatever, is that he gets to have a return. You know, and some of the most memorable parts of people's careers are the night they came back from wherever, you know what I mean? Like, those returns, or, you know what I mean? Like, so returns are always and that's something fans are always looking forward to. Like, you know, somebody might come back that's been gone for 6 weeks. That keeps stuff fresh, you know what I mean? So, you know, it's definitely, you know, nothing to worry about.
You were part of the developmental system before and then kind of through its changes, you know, starting with FCW and into NXT, which is now effectively less developmental, but also more of a third brand. Are you surprised at kind of what it's grown into so quickly? And can you talk a little bit, I guess, about how that experience really helped the Dean Ambrose persona take shape?
Well, for me, I wasn't part of the whole. NXT thing at all. You know, that my entire experience in developmental was an FCW. I was never a part of the whole NXT television thing. You know, that was going on right. I guess as I was like on my way out. I was never. Wasn't part of it. But for me, you know, like the thing I like is that, like, with like me, Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, you know, Bray Wyatt, you know, Cesaro, and that cool guy. We're at FCW. We're, you know, tearing the house down, and we were looking at the time like, man, we got a really good crew here. Like we're like that I think was where that like that kind of attitude started. That like, we're just as good as. We could take this show head to head with Raw. Geez, you know what I mean? Look at this crew we got here. You know what I mean? So like, we built up this, such an impressive roster in FCW. That we're wrestling in front of 30 people. Local access TV. Like nobody knows who. Like, we go up and do live events or do dark matches on TV. And nobody knows who we are. We don't. We're just like we felt like we were on an island. We're like the island of misfit toys, like the WWE didn't even know we existed, and that pissed us off because we were like, we're just as good as anybody's got on the show, and like geez, our whole crew might be better, so like they gave us like that chip on our shoulder, that like competitive thing that like served us well when we finally did break onto TV. We were like ready to put our money where our mouth is, we were like ready to go. We got thrown right to the deep end, with the Shield. We were immediately in like the main event scene and mixing in with the top guys. But like that's what we wanted to. That's what we've been asking for, and we were like pissed off about. You know what I mean? So it worked out good. But it's also good for them now because now they don't have to like, they don't have to go through that negative experience. To get there, they get to have their own, they get their own show and they get their own, merchandise. They get to work out in front of, or work in front of 13,000 people with, but without ever having to be on Monday Night Raw, you know what I mean? So they get to build a fan base before they even have to start, for the town, they get like to be their own brand, which is very cool.
Well, let me ask you about the Shield and kind of what the Shield became. What do you think made the Shield click as well as it did? You can try to put different pieces together, but what was it about these three guys, you and Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins, that just worked so well together? Whether you were babyface or heel and getting so incredibly over so quickly. Why do you think that worked so well and that the audience embraced it so wholeheartedly?
I think because we're all three completely different components. It's hard to explain, we just meshed well, from the get-go, and sports is connected, we're all so different from each other, we're all like three different parts of the same path, it's just like, it's sports, the main thing though is just like the work ethic, we brought to it, that, not just us, but, everybody from that, came up right then. That's kind of the current crew right now. That's like the workhorse crew that we have. Us and the Wyatt and Cesaro, etc. They don't miss anybody, but like, our theory was to go out there and just work harder than everybody every single night and get our house down every single night. That full horseman mentality of like, whether it's Paducah, Kentucky, or Madison Square Garden, we're gonna put in 30 minutes, whatever, and, work our asses off every single night. And I think eventually the fans started to, that rubbed off on, the whole crew, And eventually the fans, started to kind of pick up on that. And they just, I think our work ethic, won the crowd over.
All right, man. Thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time today.
Yeah, totally, man.
All right. Thank you very much, man. There you go, WWE Superstar Dean Ambrose, the film. 12 rounds, 3 lockdown right now from WWE Studios and Lionsgate. You can find that in select theaters, so make sure you check online. You can find out if anywhere nearby might be playing it in your multiplex or whatever, if you want to go see it on the big screen. Or you could catch it on VOD, watch it from the comfort of your own home. And, of course, this Sunday at Night of Champions, Dean Ambrose teams up with Roman Reigns and a mystery partner against the Wyatt family. So you can check that out on the WWE Network. that's going to about bring this show to a close. Figure out we go out in style on the debut episode of Just the Worst Wrestling Podcast here on the Just the Worst Podcast Network. So I want to thank you for making it all the way through. Hopefully you got some interesting things to think about. And hey, Dean Ambrose, can't ever beat that. Listen to him talk about wrestling as well as his new film. So hopefully you enjoyed that, and hopefully you'll be back next week. We're still in the beginning stages, the baby stages. So the iTunes subscriptions, Stitcher, all that stuff, you'll be able to. We'll be able to have that set up soon enough. Website, everything like that. It is in the works, but we want to hit the ground. Oh, just threw my pen. That's how excited I am. Want to hit the ground running, get things rolling, get the ball rolling here, and kick things off. Just kind of shake off some of the rust, get things just have habitual for you, so that you can get in the process, getting the habit of getting these shows coming at you fast and furious on a weekly basis. So we'll be back next week. SoundCloud, you can check that out. Make sure you find me on Twitter at InfamousKid. That's KIDD. You can find me there, as well as on Facebook, facebook.com/BillyTheKid there too. Instagram, you can find me, the whole nine. I'm out there. Instagram, Snapchat, whatever. But stay tuned and you get all the information that you need to in order for to be updated on everything that's going on. And also on Twitter, you can make sure you follow what's going on here with at JTW Podcast. So we'll have all the episodes that go posted up there as well. I want to thank Dean Ambrose for taking the time. Once again, 12 rounds 3 lockdown, Night of Champions coming up as well. And with that being said, I'm going to let you go. I'm going to get out of here as well, because I'm going to be out. So have a pleasant immediate future. We'll be back next week for episode number 2. But right now, this one is done. See ya. Just the Worst Wrestling Podcast, episode number 1, has been a presentation of Just the Worst